All right, welcome everyone. This is John Corcoran, and I'm here with Shamar Roby. Shamar, thanks for joining us. And yeah, happy to have you. Shamar's a music producer. His name of his brand or his company is Heracy. He's based out of Sacramento right now, and going to be relocating to uh, Los Angeles soon. Was previously lived for a number of years overseas and had a business there. And we're talking about the different legal issues, business issues that you're working on right now with setting up your new music business. And you've got a couple of different elements to it. Got a background in IT and business. Had a massage chair business overseas, which is interesting. I think I've seen those in the malls here. And the new business that he's got a passion for music since age 15, 16, and doing downloadable different beats through his website, and also independent music production services. All right. Okay. All right. So tell me a little bit about your passion. Why are you so passionate about music? How did that come about? Okay. And so that's how you started making music originally, but you haven't really been doing it professionally until the last 3 to 4 years, right? Okay. And how did you start getting into doing it professionally, making money? And then you started recording your beats and you put them up on this website, Heresy, that you have now. Okay. 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 And the oh, so you've been making the beats for a long time, but it's just putting them on the website is a new thing. Okay. And the website is heresy.com, Hera. Actually, you spell it for me. ACY. Okay. And I looked on there, and you can download music from that, different beats from that site. And eventually, you're going to have a services section on there as well. Okay. And your plan is to move to Los Angeles, where there's a much bigger music scene, and get more into the services side of the business as well. Okay, good. So you're working 24 hours without having to. That sounds good. All right. And presumably you're going to be like, as far as the services goes, you're not going to be working for a company. You're going to be doing it as an independent contractor, freelance. Okay. All right. And but then your background is in IT. So tell us about your background in computers. Okay. And that's what you did while you were overseas. You worked for large companies. Okay. And you haven't been doing that for a number of months now. You moved back here a couple of months ago, 3, 4 months ago. Okay. And we're in March right now, so about 4 months ago. Okay. And your goal going forward, you mentioned to me before that you imagine that you would still continue doing some building of computers to order and building websites, but that wouldn't be your primary business. Okay. And when you do that work, do you do it just under your own name, or do you have like a business name that you've used? Okay. Mm. Okay. That could be a big area. And you don't have a website promoting that? Okay. Nothing up right now. Okay. Um, all right. So, but the core goal in moving to Los Angeles and developing your business is the music side. Okay. All right. And you don't have any legal entity set up right now. Okay. Um, So the options, the basic options for you are the most common ones for someone who's in a position like yourself where they're doing essentially consulting work or have a website doing kind of a services based business. A lot of people exist as a sole proprietorship like yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's easy, it's simple. You just pay taxes on a regular basis. The IRS prefers that you do it on a quarterly basis, so that sometimes people put it off until the end of the year, and you want to work with your accountant on that if you're going to do it, tackle it that way. But there's nothing wrong with being a sole proprietor. Another option for you in California and in a lot of states is the entity called Limited Liability Company, LLC, which would be starting a separate legal entity for your business that you would run all of your um, business out of. And the advantage of that is it's a separate business. Rather than the business really being just an extension of you, it's the actual business has its own life of its own, so to speak, and you have to treat it that way. So when you open a business bank account, you might have one right now, but if you have a LLC, then you either you take your business bank account and you title it in the name of the LLC, or you open up a new one which is in the name of the LLC, and then you do as much business as possible directly in the name of the LLC. You're a member and the owner and the controller of that LLC, but it's the actual LLC, which is the company that's doing the business. Now, there are limits to that. Like, for example, if you end up getting leasing property, you want to lease commercial property, then a lot of times landlords, they know that it's very easy for a tenant to wrap up an LLC, close it down, and so they'll require a personal guarantee. Or other suppliers or vendors or business partners, if you enter into contracts with them, they may not want to do business with an unestablished LLC. They want to do business with a person, so they may require you to provide a personal guarantee of some sort. So that's something to think about. But another reason to set up your business in a separate LLC is the advantages that you get in terms of selling it. The goal here, the goal of almost any business owner, is to build a business, to make it larger and larger to the point where it's a real existing entity that's profitable, that doesn't require your constant daily activity. You have people working for you that are good, that are talented, and that it's something that would be attractive to someone else to buy. And if you set it up in the proper way where you have a separate LLC, then you can sell that ownership of the LLC to the buyer, and it's simpler that way. The alternative, if you're a sole proprietor, it's just a little bit more complicated because you might have leases that are in your name that need to be transferred. You might have contracts that are in your name that need to be transferred and whatnot. But the what I say to people a lot of times is that when people are starting a business, there's this scale, a spectrum, all the way down from very minimal bootstrap, like $100 or less, all the way up to Donald Trump or Oprah. If Oprah's starting a new business like her magazine, or if Donald Trump is starting a new golf course somewhere, he has a team of people that's working for him, and he's going to make sure that he spends a lot of, thousands and thousands of dollars to set things up properly. He doesn't set it up as a sole proprietorship. But we're not all Donald Trump, at least I'm not. So sometimes you have to prioritize, and even if you start as a sole proprietor, you can later form an LLC. Now, I haven't mentioned a corporation. A corporation's another option. They tend to be more complicated, more difficult to maintain. There's a whole body of law behind corporations. And so a lot of times people, especially when they're starting smaller businesses, they don't want to deal with the headache of setting up a corporation. And the expense of setting it up on the front end as well. It can be more expensive than setting up an LLC. But I just mentioned it there as an option as well. Now, a couple other things to think about. I think you mentioned this when we talked about it before, is getting a business license. So when you are doing business out of a city or a county, they want you to have a business license, which is essentially a tax. It's just a tax giving you the right to do business. And it's, depending on the city, it's usually not too expensive. It might be, $100 a year, $200 a year, something like that. It's not too bad. But it gives you legitimacy, and it's required, so you need to think about that. So when you move to Los Angeles, that's probably where you want to start, where you want to get the license, depending on what business you're doing, how much business you're doing here in Sacramento. Actually, if you're doing business here now, you may be able to, in Sacramento, you may be able to qualify for like a prorated portion for a portion of the year. So you might approach the city about that and find out, so you don't have to pay for the full year. Or they might even it might even refund if you are only active for 3 months or something. Maybe they refund you for the rest of the year or something. I don't know, but something to look into. So what I would do is first make a decision about whether you want to continue to operate as a sole proprietor or as an LLC, and then decide after that where you're going to move to, and that would be where you get your business license from. Now, there's another option which makes things convenient, and it's called a fictitious business name, also known as a DBA, a doing business as, which allows you to do business under another name other than your own, other than Shamar R. And it gives you kind of the appearance of being a different business, even if you're not. And it doesn't give you the liability protection of having a separate legal entity, but it does give the appearance, which can be important. So like you use the name Heracy, that might be one that you want to go file a fictitious business statement. Now that you do at the county level, at least in California. And so when you move to Los Angeles, you could have that done at the LA County level. Now that's different from, that gives you the right to do business within the county under that name. It it's not the same thing as trademarking a name. If you want to protect a name on the basis of to really protect it nationwide, then you want to trademark it, and that process. There's a lot of online services that can do it out there, or a lot of attorneys will do it for a flat rate. You'll probably spend less than $1,000, and that does give you the protection of it being trademarked and protects you in the case of someone else trying to use your name. If someone else were to go out there and use Heracy for a similar term, now it doesn't necessarily mean that it gives you the right to use the name for anything, unless you file an application for all different categories. So it doesn't mean that someone in Florida isn't going to open a restaurant called Heracy Restaurant, which might be completely unrelated to what you're doing. But when you want to start trademarking a term is if you're going to put a lot of money behind it. So if you're going to start establishing that as your brand, then you may want to go and protect it from being used by someone else for the same purpose. Okay? So business licenses, fictitious business statement. Those are the main things you want. And then the other thing is you said one thing that was of concern to you was the language that you used for the beats that you sell on your website, correct? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's a good model to try and get people to to upgrade to the higher level service. Yeah. And I didn't read through all the language of it, but where did you get the language for the two? Good. Good. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Okay, good. And then the other thing the other element of what you do is the services model. Do you have a standard client service agreement that you use? Okay. Here's what I would recommend as far as that goes. I'd recommend you get a better template. that will work for all of your services, all of that, the music industry services. And then if you have a good template, it will address all kinds of issues like what happens in the case of breach. You know, if there's any attorney's fees involved, if there's a breach by one of the parties, you know, that kind of standard language in there. And then it would have a section or an attachment, maybe you attach, where you describe more of a specific, you know, number of hours or however you quantify it, number of beats, amount of days you're going to work on them. So, you know, if you decide that you're going to work for 5 days straight for some particular studio, helping them out with something, then you can write that into that section. But you have the template for this as a client services contract that you can use permanently. And I think that would be a good idea rather than just trying to draft something in exchange the way that you kind of described it to me. Okay. And then similarly, you also mentioned that you might be working on this building computers to order and building website. Okay. So ideally, I would recommend that you have a separate services agreement, one for your music production business, one for, and it maybe could be the same one, but one for building computers to order and one for building websites. Actually, those last two can probably be pretty similar. I wouldn't be surprised if you can find a template online somewhere that would work well. But you want some kind of template for that work as well. Because let's say that you enter into a contract, an agreement to build 3 major websites for 3 different artists, and you're going to charge them $15,000 for those websites. That's a lot of money at stake. And so, if you exchange thoughts back and forth over email and then put it into a document, chances are you're not going to have thought through all the different issues and all the different legal issues that should be addressed in that kind of services agreement. So get a good template that you can use. And then the other thing is, if you do end up setting an LLC as your separate entity that you do all of your business out of, then that's actually the party to the services agreement, not you personally. Yeah. So that's something else to think about. Do you plan on getting signing a lease anywhere? Having an office space or commercial space? Okay. That's another time that you want to talk to an attorney about leasing space, about reviewing your contract, because I've represented both tenants and landlords tend to be the one who write the lease, and they tend to write them very favorable to themselves. So there probably will be some things in there that are not necessarily to Shamar's favor. So, and again, just as we mentioned earlier, even if you want to have it signed between your LLC and your landlord, the landlord, if they're sophisticated, will probably say that they want you to personally guarantee it. Yeah. So that's something to think about. Do you plan on using independent contractors or employees? Okay, and that's great. I mean, that's the way to make money as a business owner. You're an entrepreneur now, and so the more that you can bring more business in, be it designing a website, be it designing a bunch of computers or computer systems, or putting together, producing an entire album, To the extent that you can do that and also subcontract it to another independent contractor who you bring in, who you then pay a lesser amount, then you're making money off of their contribution. Yeah. Have an agreement with those people too. Have a written agreement with those people too, because there is a lot of potential. This is where there's a lot of different problems sometimes, is people after the fact claiming they were an employee, or the state trying to classify them as an employee when they're actually an independent contractor. And there's no simple, quick answer to what makes an employee, what makes an independent contractor. But basically, an independent contractor is not someone who you control the way they work, where they work, when they work. You don't control all those things generally. They produce a work product to you, which you approve, but you can't say that you need to be here at a certain time, you need to be working out of my office during these certain hours, you need to be doing your work in this particular manner. That's an independent contractor is generally has control over those types of elements. Absolutely. Right. And you might get to the point where you have a couple employees and you still have independent contractors that you use. The way most companies do it is usually they start off with some independent contractors because they don't want to make the full commitment to having the overhead of an employee. And then as they grow bigger and they have more work, then they're more likely to use bring on people as an employee. Yeah. And when you get larger like that and you start have employees, then you have to start doing payroll. And I just would strongly recommend that you find a good payroll provider out there, and there's a lot of different companies that do it, to handle that paperwork hassle, because you as the owner, your time is probably better spent doing something else. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think that those are most of the issues that I think you should be thinking about right now as you go about setting up your business. Did you have any other questions? Great question. No, you don't. An LLC, one of the great things about them is they're very flexible. So, you could be doing web design, computer assembly and production, and music business. You could do all those things. And then as your music business gets busier, you could push away some of those other pieces, like the web design, and putting away the computer pieces if you're not interested in that, if you don't want to do it at all. Or maybe you keep doing it, but it just is kind of a side thing. There are different ways that you can, there are legal issues, and then there's really positioning or strategy or branding issues. And sometimes it's more of a branding issue. There's no barrier to you doing all those things, whether you do them as a sole proprietor or whether you do them under the heading of an LLC. But you might decide at some point, for strategic reasons or for just your own focus and energy, because there are only so many hours in the day, and as an entrepreneur you want to focus your energy on the growth areas. You might decide you want to set those aside. So you can do them you can work on those things for a while and then eventually phase them out. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Shamar, I think I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and enjoyable. I really enjoyed hearing about your business, and it sounds pretty exciting. So hopefully people who are watching this will go check out Heracy.com. All right, thanks, Sean.